Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Beckwith, and I have my Sherlock Holmes hat on because Sherlock Holmes is discussed a little bit in today's story. So I just recently I posted a short story. I read a short story by Tom Riley, retired NASA engineer who's working to educate people on STEM, which is very important these days given the direction of the government down south in the US, down south relative to me here in Canada. So I want to read a second story, which it's got more of a focus on the questions of AI and usage of AI, specifically with young people moving out into the future and even today. So let's have a look at this story. It's a little bit shorter than the first one. It's actually the 16th short story that Tom has written, and it's called Thinking Tools. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's have a look at it. First of all, actually, before I get into it, just to remind you who Tom Riley is, former NASA engineer, long technical career in Earth and space observation. His post-retirement work is mentoring youth in STEM and creating climate-focused educational fiction. So he's using storytelling and people-based space concepts to engage students with the climate crisis and with science, technology, engineering, and math, so STEM. And Tom did amazing things, amazing work at NASA. I'll provide the link here so you can have a look. But all kinds of different sensors going on missions, interplanetary missions, like to map Mercury. Laser ranging instrument, LIDAR. It's like radar, but with light, with lasers, pulsed lasers. And he also worked a lot on instrumentation that would detect ozone levels, including ubiquitous and some other things. Okay, so he's done a lot of work, and he's continuing to do great work in the STEM field. So let's get right into our story here. So Thinking Tools. A public debate forces Sarah, our heroine from the last story, a young African-American woman, to defend not just her past, but the future of thought itself. So think about that, the future of thought itself. We're talking about AI. So lecture one, scene one, lecture hall shadows. The university's humanities pavilion has been retrofitted twice, first for stormproofing, then for media streaming. But the bones were still old school, high ceilings, steep rows, and polished wood that creaked when students leaned too far back. Sarah sat near the middle, not taking up a front row seat, but not hiding either. Janet N., right, her personal AI assistant, in librarian mode today, dark glasses, hair pinned up, no-nonsense blazer, notebook in hand, glowed softly from the narrow shoulder screen that Sarah wore like jewelry. So this is like a cell phone that's attached on a brace on her shoulder for her AI companion, Janet N, version N. It started with A up. So this is a very advanced version. The lecturer, a compact man in his 60s with a wind-rough voice, stood behind a podium barely holding together under its AI caption overlay projector. Technology does not merely extend the hand, he said, pausing for emphasis. It extends the mind, but not always in the direction we think. A title slid onto the main screen. How Tech Changes Thought, from Carriage to Jaguar. He clicked to the first visual, a quiet clip from Jane Eyre. Fog, horses, emotional claustrophobia. Great writers provide us with vivid visions of people, of societies, and of the technology of that specific moment in time. We can start with the world of Jane Eyre. Okay, in Bronte's world, the horizon was your personal limit. So let's talk about Jane Eyre for a little bit. You may not be familiar with it. Jane Eyre, it's a novel by Charlotte Bronte, originally published in 1847. And these are some images from movies that are made, and there's a whole Wikipedia page on the story of Jane Eyre. And Charlotte Bronte, English novelist and poet, born 1816, died 1855. A lot of people didn't live that long back in that time period. You know, modern medicine just wasn't, you know, we didn't have modern medicine. But anyway, very, very famous novelist, and Jane Eyre is her most well-known novel. Okay, so we can start with the world of Jane Eyre. It should be E-Y-R-E. In Bronte's world, the horizon was your personal limit. You thought in miles. Most personal journeys were local, minds inward. Fiction of the time mirrors that, rich inner lives bounded by place and station. Great sailing ships could circle the world, but their destinations remained distant abstractions, irrelevant to most people's daily lives. There were smooth-bore muskets. So smooth bore, no rifling of the bore, and if you know what, you know, long musket, long tube, firing the shell, the bullet, if you like, the shot through smooth bore. Basically, you can go in all different directions, so scatter all over. The idea of a rifled bore to add rotation to what's coming out the end greatly improves the accuracy. But they had smooth bore muskets and military organizations too. These inventions supported colonialism, resulting in a few great fortunes coming home from distant shores. So these technologies lead to both a way of thinking and a way of organizing society, right? They're intricately linked with societal organization, the way we think, the technologies that are used at that particular time. A man's worth as a marriage prospect was given by one number, his yearly income. Any ethical considerations were remote and would not directly affect the man. The technology defined the age, and the age defined the story. The reader was never in doubt about the time of the story. No artifacts from a different age ever appeared. "Are you taking notes?" asked Sarah to the AI. "Always," said Janet N. "Be sure I can read them," said Sarah. Moving on in time, but not in place. After only a few decades, we come to Sherlock Holmes. So let's have a look just at Sherlock Holmes. Okay, so Sherlock Holmes, fictional detective created by British author Arthur Conan Doyle, referring to himself as a consulting detective in his stories. Holmes is known for his proficiency in observation, deduction, forensic science, and logical reasoning. The character Sherlock Holmes first appeared in print in 1887 as A Study in Scarlet. Okay, and so you can, fictional detective, very famous. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, British writer and physician, is the creator of Sherlock Holmes. So there's a lot of accurate medical observations coming from Sherlock Holmes due to the author's background, being a physician. So Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, born in 1859, died in 1930, and it talks about, British writer and physician, created character Sherlock Holmes in 1887. Okay, so again, that sort of sets the time period. So moving on in time, but not in place, after only a few decades, we come to Sherlock Holmes, train tickets, foggy platforms, telegrams, deductive leaps through a growing web of connected facts, the technologies of the day. There were still horse-drawn carriages for transportation in town. The railway and the telegraph made that society and made its distinctive way of thinking. So minds stretched as people could travel further distances. Stories became about sequence, speed, logistics. The detective emerged not just to solve crimes, but to reflect the new mental map: trackable, analyzable, mobile, logical, deductive, right? Sherlock Holmes. Elementary, my dear Watson. A man of the times, spent his youth out in the colonies. Of course, British Empire ruled the world, so the colonies, lots of opportunity for young men to make their fortune. Then they returned home to a privileged life. Janet N. scribbled, "Transport tech shapes plot logic." This was on a pad that Sarah could read at her leisure. Janet N. whispered through the earbud, "He's oversimplifying. Victorian fiction was always ahead of tech." Sarah smirked but kept her focus. The lecturer moved forward in time. Okay, same, not in place, but in time. Images of Agatha Christie with her timed tea breaks and corpse clocks. What's a corpse clock? So we can look at Agatha Christie. Dame Agatha Mary Clarissa Christie, Lady Mallowan Miller, English author known for her 66 detective novels and 14 short story collections, particularly those revolving around fictional detectives Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. She's widely regarded as one of the greatest writers, particularly in the mystery genre. A writer during the golden age of detective fiction, she's been called the Queen of Crime or the Queen of Mystery. She wrote the world's longest running play, the murder mystery, The Mousetrap, and you can read more about her, just an amazing person. And one of the things she wrote was the mysterious Mr. Quinn, and there's also the idea of this corpse clock, which is quite interesting. Okay, so corpse clocks. Again, starting only a few decades later than Sherlock Holmes, with the turn of the century, the trains were only a little better, but now there were motor cars, personal vehicles for transport. Nearly all the horses had been vanquished to the rural areas. The great fortunes were made with industry in coal, steel, and manufacturing. Most men took up professions. Of course, we had the Industrial Revolution well underway. The story plots had made great shifts following changes to the society and to the ways the characters thought. Now there were complex stories weaving through many layers of society. The plots are very sophisticated puzzles, yet the readers were not confused by the changes. They loved them, in fact. "Be sure to back the notes up," said Sarah. "I am sure to need them." "Backed up and summarized to perfection," said Janet N. "And now," said the speaker, "we are faced with not one, but two major changes to human society: the development of artificial intelligence and our climate crisis. How will these hits affect our society? Too early to tell. How will these show up in our literature? It's just beginning to show." He paused again. "Every age believes its way of thinking is natural, until the next one arrives and proves that it wasn't." A ripple moved through the hall. Some students glanced at their screens, already posting quotes. Others just sat still, chewing on the idea. Janet N. circled a line on her pad. "Every age thinks its mind is normal." The lights dimmed for the final image, a tangled neural map overlaying a bookshelf. Printed fiction, AI-generated plot trees, personalized endings, real-time character polls. Janet N. leaned in, her voice barely audible. "He skipped the part where stories used to end." Sarah didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the screen, not for what it showed, but for what it implied. The age of guided minds had arrived. Okay, great quotes in this. Scene 2, the name drop. The cafe across from the university was half human occupied, half digital. Every booth had an embedded screen. Every table hosted someone who might or might not be physically present. Sarah and Janet N. took a quiet booth in the corner. The hibiscus spritz was tart. The seat vinyl was warm from sunlight through recycled glass skylights. Janet N. flickered into full visibility on the menu section of the tabletop, her blazer gone, now in her favorite beachwear mode, braided hair, mirrored shades, and a sun hat that kept defying gravity. "You're still thinking about the lecture," Janet N. said. "I'm thinking about how normal it all felt," Sarah replied. Like everyone just nodded along. No one even questioned whether today's tech might be shaping thought in ways we can't reverse. That's because most of them are shaped already. Sarah was about to reply when Janet Ann stiffened, her image sharp, one hand raised, posture alert. "What?" "Trending alert, you're back in the news," Sarah sighed. "How bad?" Janet N. brought up the stream overlay. A talking head filled the frame, styled sharp and combative. "Gideon Rusk? Again?" Same almost professional studio. Same voice, smooth, urgent, dripping with manufactured concern. "This isn't just about AI access," Gideon was saying. "This is about who gets handed the keys to cognition and when." He leaned closer to the camera. "Let me give you a real-world example. Sarah White, a name you may recognize from previous debates, was gifted a powerful post-alpha AI while still a teenager, Janet A., right? And then upgrades of the AI went from Janet A through N. Yes, Janet A was an early model, but the gifting included years of upgrade. This AI now acts as full-time assistant, counselor, co-writer, and let's be honest, moral filter. Sarah groaned. "He makes it sound like you raised me." "I did, a little," Janet N. said, unbothered, "especially after your grandmother passed and you left Florida." The stream continued. Gideon had moved into full performance mode now. "I don't blame Sarah. She's smart, committed. But what kind of mind development happens when every hard question gets co-processed by an entity with more memory, more training data, more subtlety of inference than any teacher? How do you grow a student's own voice under that kind of shadow?" A sidebar graphic appeared on the screen. "Proposed policy, AI tiered access by developmental stage." So underneath, level 1 would be basic tutor AI for literacy and math support. Level 2 would be guided inquiry AI, middle and high school only. Level 3, the AI would be a research assistance AI, post-secondary certified projects only. And then level 4, general AI companion, would be restricted. You needed to be an adult license required. The Mind Guardians hashtag flashed. It was a bit too authoritarian for Sarah's taste. Gideon wrapped the segment with a grin. "It's time we stop pretending every young mind is ready for full spectrum AI. Let them grow, not just respond. Give them a chance." Janet N. closed the stream with a twitch of her wrist. Silence settled over the booth. Sarah stared at the tabletop, her reflection barely visible in the glass. "He really believes that stuff," she said. "Or he really wants others to." "He's setting up the next move," Janet N. replied. "He wants a public fight, and you're his favorite foil." Sarah leaned back, half smiling now. "Fine, let's give him one." Scene 3, the challenge. The next morning, Sarah's inbox was already glowing. A direct message sat at the top, flagged with a digital watermark from the Civic Discourse Network. The sender line read, "Gideon Risk, moderator invite, second thoughts, debate stream." Janet N. scanned it instantly. "It's bait." Sarah tapped it open anyway. The message was polite, performatively so. "Hi, Sarah. I trust you saw yesterday's segment. I'm reaching out to invite you to a full conversation, this time with equal time and real engagement. You've been vocal about AI equity in education. I respect that. We're rebooting the series with a calmer tone. Less heat, more light. I want your perspective. Format, moderated, 2 participants, streamed with live viewer polling. The theme is AI in young minds, augmentation or interference. You can bring Janet N, of course. I'll have Dr. Mahira Osai joining me. She's developed national curriculum frameworks and speaks often on digital ethics. Let's model good disagreement, Gideon. Sarah arched an eyebrow. He's not even pretending this wasn't staged. Classic 2-on-1, Janet N said. Invite the target, then add a neutral expert, in quotes, with aligned views. You'll be the only one without an institutional affiliation. Sarah looked out the window. The light was high already. She thought of her grandmother, how fiercely she had publicly argued that future tools should empower, not fence in. I'm not afraid of the frame, Sarah said. I just don't want to waste time proving I deserve a voice. Janet then flicked a finger, pulling up Gideon's schedule. Well, you won't have to wait long. He's just posted the stream listing. You're already in the promo image. Before she responded to the email, Sarah laughed, sharp and tired. That didn't take long. The promo tile was slick. Split screen headshots, Gideon in his usual steel blue tone, smiling like a safe bet. Sarah caught mid-thought, as if surprised, tagline across the bottom, "Our young minds being hijacked by AI." The viewer count was already ticking up. The comment thread below was a mess of emojis, half-baked opinions, and conspiracy memes. Sarah snapped the screen closed. Schedule it, but I want the moderator to know I won't be polite if it turns into a trap. I already pinged him, Janet N said. He says he wants real conversation. Let's give him one. She paused. Want me to mock up a position board? Yes, I want examples. Real ones, not just from our lives. I want stories where tech reshaped how people thought, not just what they thought about. Janet N smiled. I've got a whole archive. Shall we teach the class? Sarah stood and grabbed her bag. Let's go shape some thoughts. So scene 4, second thoughts. The debate studio was cooler than it looked. Glass walls, synthetic ferns, so fake plants, and soft blue lighting gave it the feel of a wellness retreat. But the air was sharp with tension. The new LED lights pulled a lot less power than the old light studios have a reputation for. Those light studios can be blinding lights. It's like sitting in front of a light bulb in a bare room, the old interrogation. Sarah sat straight in a minimalist chair, shoulder screen live. Janet N had dressed for restraint, dark blouse, understated earrings, hair pulled back in a French twist. Best behavior, she'd said before going live. Across from them sat Dr. Mahara Osai, gray streaks in her curls, expression calm and precise. Her posture radiated institutional confidence. To her right, Gideon Risk leaned in slightly, palms open on the table. The stream counter ticked upward behind them, invisible to the audience. Thank you all for joining us, said the moderator. Tonight's theme, AI in Young Minds, Augmentation or Interference. Dr. Osai, perhaps you'd begin. Right, the so-called neutral moderator, or third person. She nodded. The concern is not about AI itself, but about timing and intensity of exposure. We now understand that cognitive independence develops in stages. Students need scaffolded tools, not fully cognitive co-pilots at 12. We propose a tiered access system, not to punish, but to guide development. She tapped a tablet. The studio display echoed her slide. Color-coded tiers from tutor to companion AI, mirroring Gideon's earlier broadcast. Gideon picked up smoothly. This isn't about paranoia, it's about balance. We don't hand a 13-year-old the keys to a self-driving car. Why should we give them access to something that can out-argue their teachers, out-analyze their parents, and rewrite their essays in 5 dialects? Sarah breathed in before speaking. Plans are neat. Enforcement rarely is. Her voice was level, but there was steel underneath. She turned slightly toward the moderator. When I was 15, I received Janet A. My grandmother gave her to me, largely through personal contacts. She believed I needed support in a world of rising seas and storms. There was little guidance at the time, and she was right for the time and place. I didn't cheat. I didn't hide my friend. I learned faster, yes, but I also learned deeper. Is AI changing the way we think? Continued Sarah. Of course it is, just as dozens of breakthrough technologies have done the same through the ages. If you are willing to consider history, look at the introduction of the printing press or the coming of the railroads and telegraph. If a technology changes how we think, well, that's the very definition of major technology. These technologies lead to both a way of thinking and a way of organizing society. They are often disruptive, but we soldier on. The alternative is to grow stale and lose all direction. Dr. Osai replied gently, that may be true for you, Sarah, but policy has to address current pattern, not historic or private exemptions. Sarah's jaw tensed. And what happens when you try to enforce that policy? Do you think students with wealth and connections will go without help? They'll lease the top game players to show off. They'll lease top performing AIs disguised as compliant tutors, bots that can ace any test and slip back into regulation mode if audited. Such bots that can outperform regulation units while holding their extra skills if challenged. The rule followers, who are often from less privileged backgrounds, will be left stuck with standard unit. Janet N. added quickly, restriction doesn't ensure equity, it just moves the gap underground. Gideon smiled, diplomatic. That's why we need real accountability structures, licensing, audits. Sarah cut in, policing minds is a terrible business model, and it always targets the wrong kids. There was a pause. Dr. Osai didn't flinch. And yet, without limits, we risk raising students who echo machine logic instead of developing human judgment. Sarah's tone cooled. Human judgment created the world we're trying to fix. The moderator raised his hand. Let's bring it back. I'd like each of you to give a short summary before we turn to audience polling. Janet N's screen flickered with prep notes, but Sarah waved them off. No script, she whispered. Then aloud, we don't need walls around young minds. We need mentors, guides, challenges. AI can be part of that if we treat students like thinkers, not liabilities. She folded her hands. Trying to fence off intelligence just makes students better fence climbers. I'd rather we taught them straight how to build. Okay, scene 5, closing argument. The moderator gave a practice nod, eyes flicking to the countdown clock above the main lens. Each side has 90 seconds. Dr. Osai, Mr. Rusk, you first. Dr. Osai spoke without looking down. We live in an age of acceleration. AI is not neutral. It shapes thought, it frames questions, even sets emotional tone. When given too early, it risks replacing the slow work of growth with the illusion of mastery. We do not ban tools, we guide their use. Gideon Rusk added smoothly, tiered access is not about mistrust, it's about developmentally appropriate scaffolding. We don't call it censorship when we teach multiplication before calculus. This is the same principle, respecting the journey of learning by not shortcutting it. The moderator turned. Mrs. White, Janet N., your reply. Sarah didn't hesitate. The problem isn't guidance. The problem is control disguised as care. She leaned slightly forward. There's a long history of denying young people full intellectual agency, especially when their tools are new or their mentors don't fit the mold. Tiered access sounds neat until it decides who gets the key to the next level. And let's be honest, those decisions track power, not progress. Janet N., her voice even and clear. What's called appropriate often means socially comfortable, but growth rarely is. I've seen students use AI to leap gaps their school couldn't afford to fill. We don't erase that need by pretending it should happen slower. Sarah closed. Every tool can be misused, but so can every policy. We need real mentorship, not restriction. Real equity, not enforced averages. And most of all, we need to stop mistaking caution for wisdom when it costs kids their chance to rise. The moderator let the silence hang just a beat longer this time, then nodded. Audience poll is now live. Final results in 3 minutes. The lights dimmed slightly as comments and votes began to scroll across the translucent walls. No clear winner yet, but nobody was logging off either, so the suspense is building. Coda, green room glare. The green room wasn't green, just a beige corridor with 2 chairs and a water dispenser that wheezed like an old dog. Sarah stood by the far wall, arms crossed. Janet N. reappeared on the shoulder screen in casual mode now, curls loose, earrings gone. Close call, but a win, Janet N. said. The poll was 53 to 47, split by age mostly. Sarah nodded. I figured. Gideon passed with a polite nod. Dr. Osai followed, pausing just long enough to meet Sarah's eyes. You argue well, she said. But be careful, the line between empowerment and overwhelm is thinner than it looks. When they were alone again, Sarah exhaled. She's not wrong. No, Janet N. said gently, but neither are you. Sarah picked up her jacket. Let's go. I'd rather teach a kid how to climb than tell her she shouldn't be up there. They walked out together, shoulder screen glowing softly against the hallway shadows. And scene 6, decompression loop. The transit car swayed gently as it glided past midnight towers. Outside, the city lights reflected off rain streaked glass, soft golds and cold whites smeared like memory. Sarah sat with her feet up on the opposite seat, shoes off, her jacket bundled under one arm. Her hair was pulled back now, exposing the tired beneath her polish. Janet N. occupied the full schedule screen beside her, stretched out virtually on a couch with mug in hand. They had the car to themselves. Well, Sarah said at last, that went somewhere. Janet N. gave a slow, ironic sip from her virtual mug. We weren't booed off stage, that's something. I wasn't trying to win, Sarah muttered. She stopped. Janet N. prompted gently. Just didn't want kids growing up like they're made of glass. Sarah smiled without humor. Or gates. Everyone wants to build gates these days. Gate who gets what help, when, how. Test them, track them, train them like puppies. You were tracked, Janet N. reminded her. I know, and it didn't feel like scaffolding. It felt like someone always checking if I'd earned you yet. A long pause. The city outside blurred into the dark. I'm not saying no guidance ever, Sarah added. Just sometimes you need the whole toolkit early. Life doesn't care about your tier level. Janet N. nodded. We used to say education was a ladder. Now some people want it to be an elevator with access codes. Sarah leaned her head back against the window. You know what got me? When Osai said students might end up echoing machine logic. And your reply landed, Janet N. said. Yeah, Sarah murmured, but it still scares me that maybe we're not teaching judgment anymore, just adaptation, just survival. Janet N. looked straight at her now. Then let's teach better, not slower, not less. The transit slowed into a familiar station. Sarah pulled her shoes back on. Same time, next controversy, she asked. Janet N. grinned. You bring the passion, I'll bring the prep notes. They stepped off together, the night folding around them like the closing page of a long, unfinished book. And there's a couple illustrations of, this is during the debate, I guess, with Sarah. And so I love these stories. They're very relevant to, many issues that we're facing today. And I just quickly had a look at AI in young minds, augmentation or interference, and came up with a few articles which are actually quite fascinating. This is a really good article. Psyche, Know Yourself. For young people, AI is now a second brain. Should we worry? It's by a resident tutor at Harvard who deals with hundreds of young students and 400 university students in dorms, and talking about their crises, things that are happening in their lives, their education, etc., and their usage of AI today. So it's a second brain for many people now today, is a reality. And AI may blunt our thinking skills. Here's what you can do about it. This is a New Scientist article just from last month. There's growing evidence that our reliance on generative AI tools is reducing our ability to think clearly and critically, but it doesn't have to be that way. And, I love when they talk about here. I mean, Socrates, I used to call it Socrates all the time. Like Socrates, I'd pronounce it Socrates. Wasn't the greatest fan of the written word. He was famous for leaving no text to posterity. He was a great philosopher, of course. He believed that a reliance on writing destroys the memory and weakens the mind. Some 2,400 years later, Socrates' fears seem misplaced, particularly in light of evidence that writing things down improves memory formation. Right? Physically handwriting notes, I do that all the time. But his broader mistrust of cognitive technologies lives on. Growing number of psychologists, neuroscientists, and philosophers worry that ChatGPT and similar generative AI tools will chip away at our powers of information recall and blunt our capacity for clear reasoning. Okay, so it's a fascinating article in New Scientist. So these issues are very much with us. So again, Thank you for listening. I really want to thank Tom Riley for all of his work on STEM and for writing these short stories. And I'm honored to be able to read another short story from him. So thank you, and bye for now.